And welcome back to the Hot Lap where, yes, F1 breaking news. Oscar Piastri extends his contract to 2026. This news story is all over the place, but an article from Henry Valentine from PlanetF1.com, as we know, he signed a new contract with McLaren that will see him extend his time with the team until the end of the 2026 season. Now, the Australian rookie, as we know, he's impressed with his performances so far this year. He's been quite close to, when you think about it, he's been really close to Lando, I nearly forgot his name now. I was going to say Lando Norris. I was thinking Star Wars then, but no, Lando Norris. As we know, Piastri's grown in his stature alongside his teammate as the season has, gone on, prompting in what McLaren describe as an easy decision by his McLaren management team to keep this youngster for years to come. I mean, He's done so well. As remember Silverstone, he had the pace to beat Lando Norris, and it is a multi-year contract extension until 2026. So Piastri stood among the top three for the first time, as we know, in the sprint in Belgium before that summer break, and the pace improvements on that McLaren have enabled him to grow his on-track performances. Now his bosses have lavish praise on him for how he has gone about his work so far this season, and the Piastri-McLaren partnership will now continue for a further 3 seasons after this one concludes. Now, Andrea Stella said, it's fantastic to confirm that Oscar has signed a multi-year extension with the team. He said, Oscar is an asset to McLaren and constantly impresses with his performance, work ethic and attitude. So it was an easy decision to make. He has already proved pivotal to the team, so it's brilliant to have his vote of confidence as we push to win championships again in the future. He said, I'm looking forward to seeing him develop with us as we continue our journey together. Zach Brown's weighed in and said, I'm delighted to be continuing our partnership with Oscar through to the end of 2026. He's an incredible talent and an asset to the team, so it's fantastic to be committing to each other in the long term. I mean, well done. You have to start to wonder, though. I don't know if this is if we're looking at like conspiracy theorists or anything. Does this mean that Lando is potentially off to a McLaren seat? From McLaren, I mean, to Red Bull, for example. Do they know more than they can let on? The only reason why I'm asking that is because the length of this contract extension. And if you remember the absolute news on gpfans.com, that Piastri's rejection of Alpine last year in the summer. I mean, you've got football teams saying that we understand that with his agreement, Sevilla FC have put out a press release late this afternoon that Alex Telles is playing for us next year. I mean, football clubs, Ryanair, Oscar Piastri, currently the Paris of F1, from Alpine to McLaren. Fly out, Alpine doesn't know. Fly back if McLaren screw him. Passengers, Oscar Piastri. And the tweet was from Oscar is, I understand that without my agreement, Alpine F1 have put out a press release late this afternoon that I'm driving for them next year. This is wrong, and I have not signed a contract with Alpine for 2023. I will not be driving for Alpine next year. I mean, even Specsavers, as you can see, have put out something. So, okay, so who needs to call us this morning? It was fairly epic, wasn't it? It was when F1 pretty much blew up, let's say, in relation to social media, and it almost transcended the sport. But there we go. But let's get into our Japanese Grand Prix preview. Yes, this is this is up there on the Pirelli website or Facebook page. Looking obviously at the tyres, looking at Suzuka, and interesting, Pirelli have got a fast 5 facts about the Japanese Grand Prix. As we know, it started, well, as you may not know, but it started as a sports car race held in Suzuka in 1963, won by Peter Ward, driving a Lotus 23. And a few years later, that race moved to Fuji Speedway. Now, Suzuka really hasn't really changed too much. And if you remember, Formula One arrived in Japan for that final race of the 76 season. If you don't remember, they did a race on it. Niki Lauda, James Hunt, Rush. But it would be another decade before F1 returned to Japan after that, on what is said by many people to be the best Formula One circuit in the world. And it did in 1987. So Suzuka, it did so. The Suzuka and the circuit have been home of the Japanese Grand Prix pretty much ever since, apart from 2 years, 2007, 2008, when it was held at Fuji. Suzuka was developed in the 1962 as a test track for Honda, and it was designed by Dutchman John Hugenholtz. His figure-of-8 track has remained unique in F1 and has only undergone minor modifications, such as the addition of that Casio triangle chicane at the end to slow down cars before the main straight. Yes, that triangle, that chicane, that famous chicane that Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna knew all too well in 1989. Now, the fact that the track crosses over itself means that the high demands are roughly evenly balanced between the left and right of the car. The snaking S-bends at the start of the lap also help with this. And there are two other famous corners. Yes, we've got the spoon curve, but I think the one that a lot of people know is 130R, named for its 130 degree radius. And then there are the Degner curves. I mean, we'll get all into that during practice. And as we know, the Japanese Grand Prix has always had that chance of rain. Although this year, when we look at the weather, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. Now, as you can see, the compounds being used are the C1, the C2, and the C3. And the number of laps we are looking at 53 laps, a race distance of 307.471 kilometres, a circuit length of 5.8 kilometres, and a lap record of a 130.983 by the 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton. And interestingly, it's got lateral energy, traction. It's got traction, tyre stress, asphalt grip, braking. In terms of tyre stress, we're looking at 5, very much like Silverstone in terms of the corners, which is why you've got the C1, C2, C3, which I believe are the hardest tyre compounds that Pirelli are bringing. And as we know, local drivers have also played a big part in the history of the Japanese Grand Prix. If you remember, we've got obviously Aguri Suzuki, if anyone remembers him. Yuki Tsunoda is going to be flying the bag for Japan. And who remembers Kamui Kobayashi by getting that F1 podium at home? Absolutely fantastic. What can Yuki Tsunoda do? The pressure, I imagine the pressure's going to be on him somewhat, isn't it? I mean, if we look at the race, we had a race last year, but it was very much a wet race last year, if I'm honest, where this is the fastest laps. But when we look at the actual race result here, it was Max Verstappen won by 27 seconds. Bearing in mind there were only a handful of laps. He was like over a second a lap faster than anyone else. And I think it was Perez and Leclerc right at the end, with Perez beating Leclerc. Leclerc ended up getting that penalty, and Max Verstappen confirmed as world champion. Lewis Hamilton couldn't get by Esteban Ocon between 4th and 5th. When we look at the starting grid, the fastest lap was a 129.304 last year, and that was obviously by Max Verstappen, followed by Leclerc and then Sainz. It was quite close in qualifying though, when you look at it. I mean, practice 3 was Verstappen on top, but when you look at practice 1 and practice 2, it was very much a mixed bag, with Alonso for Alpine in practice 1 on top, and George Russell and Lewis Hamilton doing a Mercedes 1-2, giving us all hope. But alas, it didn't really take, did it? Here's a slightly different look, obviously, at the Japanese Grand Prix here. As you can see, it does have quite a few turns. I don't really have my cursor on, so I can't really show you, but this is the 37th Japanese Grand Prix, and as we know, the race debuted with that James Hunt thing. Now, Michael Schumacher, interestingly, is the most successful driver at the Japanese Grand Prix. He's won the race on 6 occasions, starting with Benetton in 95, and then Ferrari on that absolutely classic race in 1997. That's available on the F1 app if you want to watch it. It's amazing. And then obviously we've got 2000 and 2002 and 2004. Lewis Hamilton could match him this weekend. He has 5 victories in Japan, but not Suzuka. We've got Fuji in 2007 in that absolute marvellous wet race, very akin to Niki Lauda and James Hunt. And then with Mercedes in 14 and 15 and 17 and 18. Schumacher has 8 victories in total, though, in Japan, having also won both editions of the Pacific Grand Prix in Ada in 94 and 95 when he was Benetton. Who are the most successful team here? Well, interesting, it's McLaren. They have 9 victories to Ferrari's 7. McLaren's first win came in Fuji in 77 for James Hunt, and most recently at Suzuka in 2011 with Jenson Button. Now, Hamilton is one of 4 Japanese Grand Prix winners on the current grid. And like him, we've got Fernando Alonso, who won in 2006, and Fuji in 08 in the Renault. Funny enough, that was the race after the controversial Singapore Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas has won it in 2019 and Max Verstappen last year. And as we know, that Suzuka track is really, really narrow. And it gives a pronounced qualifier bias. It says, now with the 32 Grand Prix at Suzuka, 27 have been won from the front row. Bottas won from P3, interesting. Alonso from P5. And in 89 and 90, Nannini and Piquet respectively won from 6th. Both in races where neither front row starter was classified. But the genuine outlier is that race in 2005 when Kimi Raikkonen won, once again available on that F1 app. Now, both Piastri and Sargent race at Suzuka for the first time this weekend. Liam Lawson, though, as I think we've mentioned already, is potentially somewhat of an expert. He's raced on here before. He races here he raced it back in April in Super Formula. And now Red Bull Racing, as we know, can win the Constructors this weekend. They have 597 points. Mercedes are on 308 points, which are a lot of points behind. There are 309 points remaining after Suzuka. So to win this race, Red Bull must outscore Mercedes by 1 point or more and not be outscored by Ferrari by 24 points. So Mercedes this is an interesting article that's been coming out after the Singapore Grand Prix. As you can see here, Mercedes hit back at speculation of Lewis Hamilton podium no-show. So Mercedes have denied they did not send any of their team members to celebrate with Hamilton after the TV images appear to make him very much alone, let's say. Now, during the scenes of celebration, the immediate aftermath of the Singapore Grand Prix, a few TV viewers appeared to notice that Hamilton was missing some of his colleagues, while he was congratulated by the Ferrari McLaren members who were there to support Sainz and Norris. The Mercedes crew appeared absent. However, Mercedes deny not showing up, regardless of what the camera showed. James Allison said, "I am going to have to disagree a little bit with the premise of the question. Of course, the team was there at the podium to celebrate with Lewis," he said. "As many of the team, as it was practical to get to the podium, were there because we enjoy it. We love standing there and clapping and cheering for our driver. Necessarily," he said, "a certain amount of team had to stay in the garage during that event because we needed to receive George Russell's car back from the marshals who were bringing it back into the pit lane. But the rest of the team were all down at the podium cheering along with everyone else." And also interesting, he comments on George Russell. He goes, "As for the other Mercedes driver, Allison commented that Russell was inconsolable following his late crash. He said, 'I'm not sure none of you will be surprised to know that he was essentially completely devastated. Probably it's very easy for us to underestimate just how much these drivers put into their driving, how much it matters to them.' He went on to say, 'We all know it is important, but the degree to which it dominates all their decisions is something that is easy for us to underestimate.' And George was absolutely inconsolable in the aftermath of that race. But going back to the Japanese Grand Prix, the weather, yes, the all-important weather. Well, if there's going to be any wet running, this is from gpfans.com, it's probably going to be the Friday. They said, however, this has fallen to 70% prediction during the week. Forecast now suggesting FP1 and FP2 have only a 40% chance of being affected by rain. Overall, the skies remain overcast, and when the teams start hitting the track on Saturday, it appears pretty much dry running. The track should be in perfect condition for FP3 and Saturday's qualifying session. And on Sunday, well, for the race day, it says the clouds are expected to return. Plenty of sun is still forecast, and even less rain, with just a 10% chance of rain on Sunday. So no wet weather chaos like last year. A lot of people are saying, as we mentioned in our previous show, that it's probably going to be Red Bull being the faster team. If I'm honest, they're probably going to destroy everyone. Coming back, kind of like to get revenge for Singapore. But if you want to look at it, this is the Sky times. We've got practice 1 at 3 a.m. Coverage. The actual practice starting at, I think, 3:30. Practice 2 starts at 7 a.m. for our UK listeners. Add an hour for Europe. Practice 3, obviously at 3:30. Live coverage starting at 3:15. Qualifying, the coverage starting at 6, with the actual qualifying starting at 7. Don't forget, though, the big day, the Grand Prix, the actual race is going to start at 6 o'clock in the morning. 7 probably add an hour in Europe, but the coverage starts at 4:30. Who is going to, I mean, who's going to win? Who is going to win? I don't know. I mean, could it be this guy? Could it be Oscar? Could it be the wonderful Oscar Piastri? I doubt it. But I do think McLaren could have a really, really good show. They did really well at Silverstone, which is quite a fast circuit as well. It's going to be really interesting to see Red Bull. I imagine Red Bull are going to be pretty much quite dominant, if I'm honest. However, how dominant, I think, especially in the race, are they going to be? If they don't win by that much, maybe this new technical directive has actually affected them. A lot of people are suggesting not. A lot of people have suggested that the Japanese Grand Prix was just an outlier, which I think... No, the Singapore Grand Prix was just an outlier, which I think it was, if I'm honest. So, but I think after FP1 and FP2, we'll be doing a show, we'll be doing a review, and we will most certainly see if that is the case. But I fully expect the next time I talk to you on the Hot Lap, the news show anyway, it's going to be talking about Red Bull have got their mojo back after losing it in Singapore. But wouldn't it be nice if it's really competitive and we have a really exciting race? Kind of like, you know, essentially we had 3 teams, McLaren, Mercedes and Ferrari, vying for the victory for Singapore. And in terms of pace, had Red Bull qualified well, they would have been right there as well. Anyway, this has been the Hot Lap. Massive congratulations to Oscar Piastri on that, wow, on that really, really lengthy contract. Let's hope that he can challenge within that contract for the World Championship. Speak to you next time.